least my conspiracy theory. I don't have any empirical evidence. And at that point, Air Force Chief got back to him later and said, yes, sir, this is Dr. A.Q. Khan, the Pakistani top nuclear scientist. He knows, he takes some stuff from Kahuta, takes it to Taftan, and Zahedan, Taftan, on the Iranian side, there's an air base. So Musharraf, as head of the state, calls his top nuclear scientist who runs his nuclear program and asks him, why is there C-130 flights coming and going to Iran? And A.Q. Khan said to him, sir, this is too sensitive a matter for me to share it with you. And that's when Musharraf says, I decided, that's it for A.Q. Khan. He started probing it further. And Musharraf was informed that there are North Korean nuclear scientists who are roaming around in Pakistan's nuclear facility, Kahuta. And he said to them, I want them to be packed up. I mean, there is some among the scholars who have researched this topic, some argue Musharraf knew about the North Korean part. He was not aware of the Iran part, but the North Korea part he was aware of. And the last and not the least is the Libya story, where A.Q. Khan by then had developed his expertise and his network in a fashion that there was nothing directly that went from Pakistan to Libya. He established small facilities, developed links with contractors in Turkey, in Malaysia. The main consignments and the main whole infrastructure, and I'm not a technical person, so I'm sorry if I'm short of the use of the exact technical words linked here. All the necessary equipment, not the trigger system and the delivery system, but how you will enrich uranium and convert it into gas so that you have not only the equipment but the whole process. That was done almost at a level which state had no direct control or involvement. It was purely A.Q. Khan. Go back to the Iran story for a second. The way it had started off in 1987 was that Iranian leadership approached Pakistan. Khamenei and Rafsanjani approached Pakistan and said, we need support on the nuclear weapons. And when they asked this question to General Zia-ul-Haq directly, and General Zia, the military dictator from 1977 to 1988, he said to his own nuclear scientists, go talk to Iran, because Iran is very important for us. Whenever there was a war with India, Iranians always gave us their air force, access to their airports, support us through oil. So we can't say no to them. Talk to the Iranians, but give them only that much which they think you are giving them something important, but don't give them such important things that they actually make the point. So that was Zia's policy, and this is based on interview with the Pakistani ambassador in Iran at that time, who later rose to become Pakistan's ambassador to US also, and also Pakistan's foreign secretary. So this is published. These are the stories I'm telling you are well-known, documented stories that I collected or based on my own direct interviews. So with Iran, the opening was created by the state. And when and this I learned also from another colleague who was the Iranian deputy foreign minister, who was my colleague at the Belfer Center at Harvard University for many years. I mean, one of the great things that Belfer Center and Harvard University has done to this day, I think for the last 20 years, every year they get a fellow from Iranian academia or the political side. And that allows a lot of Graham Allison and Jessica Sen and so many others have, I think, played a great role, and Ash Carter, whose picture is right in front of me, to get the Iranian scholars there at Belfer. The Iranian deputy foreign minister told me, and then I interviewed and I quoted him in the book. He told me that very early on, we realized that the centrifuges that A.Q. Khan gave us were defective centrifuges. He said, but we pulled it off because he then connected us to his smugglers and contacts in European countries. And those European connections made it possible. And then they realized, okay, by then they realized the Pakistani political leadership is going to try to fool them and not give them the real stuff. So they approached A.Q. Khan directly and had a deal with him in Dubai, $3 million, which we have even bank details of who got what. So this is the point I'm making now bringing it to the lessons. This was the deviance part, the nuclear proliferation part, was based not that there were some state actors who sat across a table and said, let's give it to Iran, let's give it to North Korea. No. It was a much more complicated issue. It was linked to loose controls, because no one in the Pakistani military and intelligence establishment was either trained enough or had any scientific knowledge to watch A.Q. Khan. A.Q. Khan was a godfather for them. He was the father of the nuclear bomb. Everyone was looking up to him because they said, this man brought nuclear weapons to Pakistan, or for Pakistan, or developed for Pakistan. We owe everything to him. No one was ready to be suspicious about him. So A.Q. Khan had a larger, not only a large ego, but he had a larger global perspective from his point of view. He was friends with a Pakistan Army chief later on, General Aslam Beg. And together they had this theory not only of strategic depth in Afghanistan, but they had General Aslam Beg, one of the also very bright, from the Pakistani point of view, a bright general, who believed this idea of a triangle. He said it's Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. This was his theory that this region the South Asian region can be safeguarded only if Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan are on the same page. Based on this theory, the army chief, during his time as active leader and later on as an independent analyst as well, but a former chief is more than an independent analyst, he had facilitated, allowed, permitted A.Q. Khan, Pakistani nuclear scientist, to share stuff with Iran. In case of North Korea, it's a different story. Pakistan needed delivery system. It was told the only way to do is through no-dong missile. They went to North Korea, bought no-dong missiles, took off the sticker made in North Korea, put it made in Pakistan, changed the name Ghori, which is the name of a well-known warrior or leader in South Asian history. And when North Koreans were refusing or delaying the delivery of the system, they offered, A.Q. Khan was brought in the negotiations. These are official negotiations. A.Q. Khan was brought in and he said, I offer you something else on the side, which is this system. The North Korean program was on a different route. We don't know how much utility was for what A.Q. Khan gave them, but now we know from latest research, latest developments of their effort to make hydrogen bomb that there is some relevance or some utility of that as well. Libya, I have already explained. The lessons from these are, there was no three transactions with Iran, Libya, and North Korea. In each case, there were two major transactions. With Iran, Pakistan worked in 1987, then in 1993. Same with North Korea and Libya. I, in my book, looked at these 6 case studies, and what I found out was, it was dependent on certain variables. Number one, loose controls in this sense that state had no capacity to look at A.Q. Khan. So it's a matter of not looking the other way. It's a matter of not knowing, not capable to even know. No general or no scientist, other scientist was aware. Everyone thought A.Q. Khan is going to meet the Iranians or the Chinese or UAE, and you can Google and you'll find pictures of A.Q. Khan meeting heads of state, which is very unusual. Your top leader of a nuclear program is not going to call on the president of China or king of UAE, but that was the kind of profile and the image they built for A.Q. Khan. So there was no controls, not loose controls in command and control system, no command and control system, I'm talking about 80s and 90s. Secondly, severe civil military rift. Pakistan this was pendulum, military leadership or military control to civilian control. Benazir Bhutto, Nawaz Sharif, now Imran Khan. On the other end was military dictatorship. There was such severe tension. I was once asking a former US ambassador who lives in DC, I was saying, you were playing an important role, and based on my research, I've seen you were meeting these 3 top players, the President of Pakistan, Prime Minister, and President on weekly basis. So what's your take? What was A.Q. Khan doing? And he has actually written it, Mr. Milan. He says, we knew A.Q. Khan is doing something, but we had our intelligence, the CIA was not sure what is exactly his route. He said, however, I was meeting the 3, the Prime Minister, the President, and Army Chief, because I was their go-to person to resolve their internal battles. So it was the US ambassador who they were always talking to, because everyone thought US is so powerful, US is giving so much aid. Army chief always wanted the US ambassador to tell the Prime Minister what to do, and vice versa. So in that scenario, what caused nuclear proliferation? No controls and no command and control system, severe tension between civil and military leadership. The third factor was US-Pakistan relations, which is again very relevant to today. I have proved in my book, based on the limited data that I had, that on those 6 occasions that proliferation happened, it happened at a time when US-Pakistan relations were at the lowest ebb. The bad sign, if you know what I'm saying. Because whenever the Pakistan-US relations goes down, proliferation happens. Also, religious political parties. And that is an area which is problematic in a sense that although the religious extremists are not in power, they can never win an election in Pakistan. They always got, religious political parties would get 10% vote, 15 at the best. Currently they are, I think, 7 or 8% vote percentage. However, they have street power. And although in one case recently we have seen state to put its foot down and arrested the top leaders of the whole movement, which seemed like it would take over Pakistan, fizzled away in a matter of weeks because the military leadership, along with the political leadership, decided we are going to arrest this person. And they just clearly said to him, shut up or we'll take out every one of you. And that was the end of the story. And that then supports the Indian and US contention at times. That the Pakistani militant groups, even the political parties, operate because they get a support from state. Because whenever they want to really take them out of the equation, they're always successful. So it means that this whole religious political parties' power or religious extremism is kind of is a factor which is at play, which is used and manipulated, and it's not real. I think it is real also. And there are radicalization trends which are also real. But these are the 4 or 5 variables that I had seen, and I had explained that whenever some religious extremist movement or some religious political player is also more powerful, that is normally the time when also proliferation happens. So these are 5 or 6 things. Now I bring about 7 or 8 minutes, I'm fine with time. Now what this all means is this nuclear scene and history with one more difference that since 2000 there's a significant change in a sense that now Pakistan has a very well developed command and control system. SPD, it's Special Programs Division, which now manages Pakistan's nuclear program, is a far more developed and organized institution. There are very specific controls. US has been supportive of this effort as well. Pakistan has about 10,000 special forces which are just trained to secure the nuclear facilities. Their own profiling system for within the nuclear program has improved significantly, I'm told. And based on my interviews directly in Islamabad and in Washington, DC, where I was told US has been, even when the relations were down and every other element of financial aid from US side was cut, this aid to nuclear security continued, even to this day. I was told meetings between Pakistani nuclear leaders and commanders in US happen very regularly, mostly in towns and cities which are not the capital city or the important cities, because they want to keep it kind of secret, understandably so. I was also told Pakistan continues to be a bit suspicious about US support, although they receive the funds and benefit from it. But some of the equipment, a friend was telling me, it's not that some of the equipment Pakistan received still is unused, because Pakistan thinks that those labs have some chips on them which can crack Pakistan nuclear weapons. So there's element of mistrust even in that arena, but still there has been cooperation. And Pakistan's nuclear program has come a long way. Just to explain, A.Q. Khan did terrible things with the support of state in some cases, or individuals from security institutions, but Pakistan's nuclear security per se has come a long way. They have learned the lesson in this case. Often we on these bad and wrong stories or negative stories, we stop where it is still in the negative zone. In this case, things have changed, I must add. And this is widely acknowledged elsewhere. It's cannot be verified because in such issues, these are very closely held state secrets. But most seasoned and expert scholars who follow this issue agree that Pakistan's nuclear command and control system is in a far more advanced stage than before in the last 20 years. What this means now for Pakistan's security nets. On Taliban negotiations, briefly, after 17 years, Pakistan, and keep those lessons from nuclear on the side for a second, because I'll use those in my conclusion in about 5 minutes or so. But on Taliban negotiations, this is after 17 years, the direct US Afghan negotiations are happening. The Afghan leadership is not on board. No other player is there. It's more of a bilateral attempt, which is a standard US way to do things, which may be useful in some cases, but in this day and age, it might not be really effective in many cases, because multilateralism is something which enhances global security. But keeping that point just in mind for students, just to be clear on what are the pros and cons of bilateral approach. In this case, Afghan Taliban also have motives. They are talking to the United States because they know it is US whose power and whose money is making Afghanistan run. I mean, Afghanistan receives more than 50%, and some would argue 80% of Afghan funding or Afghan budget is linked to US support. I think at least more than between 50 to 60%. Which means if Taliban today will take over, or if Taliban are successful in signing a deal with the United States that US will leave Afghanistan, then there is a transition momentum in Afghanistan. Which means what will happen to the Afghan military and police? Will Afghan Taliban join Afghanistan under the present constitution as a new political force? That would have been ideal if that is the case. If the US-Afghan Taliban negotiations bring us to a point where Afghan Taliban say we are giving up weapons and we are joining our country's future as a political force, that would have been an ideal thing. That is not the case. Afghan Taliban believe that they have control in many districts. They can continue to make Afghanistan an unstable place. If US forces are leaving, they would expect, and they expect, I think, that they will take over, or they will be the new force, and they will push away the constitutional domain. And there is where it becomes problematic, because currently the Northern Alliance, also Mr. Ashraf Ghani and Karzai and his people and other leaders of Northern Alliance, they are not going to accept Taliban to come back victoriously to Kabul under any circumstances. So if there's just a deal between US and Taliban, it is a recipe for another civil war. There has to be some adjustment, and we have not seen any signs of that, because Ashraf Ghani and the other Northern Alliance leaders at this time are not aware of what is being discussed and what is being finalized. Once that is being if, for instance, Taliban are going to sign this agreement with US, you will leave Afghanistan to us, and we ensure that there will be no Al-Qaeda or ISIS. So that's our concern, right? From a national point of view. We don't want Al-Qaeda or ISIS to have another sanctuary in Afghanistan, because that means our security concerns become then paramount. From Zalmay Khalilzad's point of view, from President Trump's administration point of view, it is how much money we are spending, $40 or $50 billion a year, and whether Al-Qaeda or Taliban or anyone from Afghanistan can create a national security threat for us here in our homeland. So that's our primary concern. For Afghanistan, it is different. They will view as Taliban coming into signing this contract with US that no Taliban, no Al-Qaeda or ISIS will be there, but they're going to take over Kabul. The Northern Alliance is not going to take it lying down. And that's the big issue, how US will have then another set of negotiations with the Afghan leadership. And within this context, Pakistan is a big player. Pakistan is bringing some of these leaders on the table. Pakistan is playing an important role and positive role to the best of my knowledge. India is very concerned, but India is giving time. Let's see what happens. Russia, China, Qatar, the Saudi Crown Prince was in Pakistan last week, signed $6 billion aid for Pakistan. They have huge influence. The point I'm making is, it's not simply a deal about withdrawal. It is much more to that. It's about transition to a different system. If we couldn't help that transition in the last 17 years with trillions of dollars, you think this will happen in an organic fashion? No. For this, we need a multilateral approach. That's my point. Also a broader point. About also, this is linked to the nuclear security issue as well. In many cases, these regional power players have to be on board, whether it is Russia or China or India, for that matter, and Pakistan. Currently, the Taliban leader who is, when I quoted Mr. Zalmi Khalilzad, he's talking to Abbas, Mr. Abbas, who's one of the top Afghan leaders, who's negotiating on behalf of Taliban. The person is not sure. He's not the real face of Taliban in a sense that he's Mullah Omar of Taliban. Since Mullah Omar's death and others, there are various factions of Taliban. He is trying to keep his communication and his control of the military leaders also, along with talking to other Taliban factions. The problem is, as soon as we'll come close to a deal, there will be more factions. We know this from our study of various other negotiations with terrorist or extremist organizations across the world. Colombia, FARC, or Ireland, and many other cases. So the crux of the matter here is, of this Taliban negotiation, it's a positive thing. No one else, we were not doing it previously. It's a delayed process. It's an important process. But it will have to go further for next 2 years. We don't know what is the political timeline in the United States. President Trump next year, whether what will happen to various other legal developments, what will, with the political campaign for 2020, what will be the interest level here, whether Zalmi Khalilzad will have the same kind of support. So we have a timeline of almost 6 months to 1 year at the most, in which we have to pull it off. And linked with Taliban negotiations is the security of the region. India, Pakistan, we bet there will be some military action in coming days from India, maybe a small, limited one from India and across the line of control, which is not the international border, which is the Kashmir side is divided by this arbitrary line of control where UN observers are there. Pakistan may retaliate. It may be a small show from both sides to do something and not do something big, but it can escalate into a war. How will that impact Taliban negotiations? Pakistan has already said, in case India is going to conduct any military action, this will have direct implication on negotiations. Indirectly saying, the militant groups and leaders we are bringing on the table, we are not going to do that for you. So they are indirectly asking the United States, please stop India from doing it. India argues, US is always doing this because Pakistan uses nuclear blackmail. So this is a cycle in which South Asia is stuck. My argument is, this will, the only way you will have change in this paradigm, otherwise we have seen this cycle before. There are some positive developments in it. Good command and control nuclear system in Pakistan, which means there's more nuclear security in Pakistan. This is one factor. Taliban negotiations are very vulnerable and dependent on various other factors. It's a good development, but we are not sure where it will go. And then link this with how US continues to engage with China and Russia and that region. Which, if we will start looking at China and Russia as the biggest contemporaries and enemies or the new big challenge, it will be a contest for space in South Asia, where China and Russia are pretty strong today, and US leverage is declining. So this overall scene, it's a mixed scene of some hope of better nuclear command and control, but all the other factors tell me that the situation is more precarious and more volatile than before. I will close with this statement of Pakistani General Ziaul Haq. This is in a profile, a book by John Perisco's biography of CIA Director William Casey in 1983, and I found this quote very relevant, and I'll end with this because this explains how Pakistan, but also India probably looks at US, but more likely Pakistan continues to do that. He says, he told Casey, being a friend of the United States was like living on the banks of a great river. The soil is wonderfully fertile, but every 4 or 8 years the river changes course, and you may find yourself alone in a desert. That's their organizational principle when it comes to relations with US. I end my comments with this and look forward to your questions.
So thank you very much, Hassan. Just to remind you, the book is Pakistan's Nuclear Bomb, a story of defiance, deterrence, and dominance. The books are on sale outside the room. And thank you for organizing your talk, because it's such a complex issue around those themes of deviance, deterrence, and defiance. And also I wanted to thank you for looking at something on the bright side, because this was an issue I was wondering about, and that's the positive control of nuclear weapons in Pakistan today. So it's great to know that the command and control capabilities have been improved there. So I just wanted to ask two quick questions before opening it up, and both of those are just to update us sort of on what's happening today in the post-AQCon world. And so the question is, what is Pakistan's nuclear posture? We suppose they have 120 weapons or so. Is that enough? You know, are they continuing to build themselves? And then also, has there been any movement in terms of proliferation now that we've seen the end of AQCon, I believe? There still is that element of defiance, and you link that to, you know, what's been referred to as Allah's bomb, both by the Iranians and the Pakistanis. And so the question is there a relationship that is currently operational between Pakistan and Iran? And is there any assistance that you're aware of, or at least communications around the Iranian nuclear program? So I hope that's not too much for you, but.
Absolutely. No, thank you.
So.
Absolutely. No, I'll give a short answer. The reason is, my apologies, I was looking at the wrong watch. So I took 10 minutes more, because are 120 bombs enough? I think even 5 bombs are good enough, if deterrence is the motive. And that's why this is problematic in a sense, because once you get into a nuclear race, or race of any sort, with India or other neighbors, that is very disruptive in terms of your priorities. That's why, I mean, this, when we say education is the cornerstone of liberty, and if you're spending only 2% of your, or 5% of your national budget, and if you have a literacy rate of 50%, what 120, even 1,200 nuclear bombs would be of no value. This is the lesson we learned from former Soviet Union. Pakistan, as well as, if I say, India, is refusing to learn from this lesson. So this, and the signs are that Pakistan is continuing to develop more nuclear facilities. They believe they have to, because 120 bombs is already, they might be ahead of India soon, according to a British study. So that in itself is problematic. That also, if I may take this opportunity to explain, this is not a Pakistan-India problem or Pakistan issue. This, as we know, it's a global issue. Where the US, China, and Russia, especially US and Russia, are also in the same cycle. And also linked to this is this whole notion of nuclear capacity and nuclear posture and your nuclear power. At a global level, we have given so much pride, in some ways, or honor or prestige to this idea of being a nuclear weapon state. I think it's very, very problematic, because it creates a model and a paradigm which, how can you say to others, we are good enough and we are mature enough to have being a nuclear state, and you are not? There's no clear convincing argument for that. So the global powers who have nuclear weapon status, I think they are all part of the problem, because the way we have created an image of a nuclear weapon state. And maybe it sounds too philosophical, but I think that is at the core of this proliferation issue. On Pakistan-Iran thing, I think all relations stopped, and the relations are actually quite tense. In fact, the day this terrorist attack happened in India, a similar attack, a terrorist attack, happened in Iran, and Iran made the same allegation in Pakistan. That the terrorists who conducted on the Pakistan-Iran border this attack were linked to the Pakistani state somehow. And then the Iranian foreign minister dashed to India, or I saw a picture of both of their foreign ministers. And India and Iran are far more closer than Pakistan and Iran. India and Iran are far more closer than Iran and Pakistan, primarily also because of the reason that Iran believes that the most damaging information given to IAEA about Iranian nuclear program was given by Pakistan. And Pakistan believes that the AQ Khan stuff that was given to Iran, that came out of those negotiations. So since the Musharraf years, for the last about 10 years or so, Pakistan-Iran relations have really gone down. Pakistan had also refused to work further on the Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline, and rather focused on TAPI, the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline, where there's relatively more progress and there's more of a deal that has taken place there. So Pakistan, the chances of Pakistan-Iran nuclear collaboration are really close to zero, and because of the bilateral and geopolitical situation.
Thanks. So I'm about to open it up to the audience. Could you please identify yourself? And I'm going to repeat the question just for the sake of the recording. Thanks. Hugh.
Hugh Gustafson here at the Ayat School. So I wondered if you could imagine any circumstances in which Pakistan would sign the CTBT, the Test Ban Treaty, or even the Nuclear Ban Treaty that passed the UN 2 years ago?
I think the only possibility is if India would do so, and that has been their standard position. Recently, I heard there was some nuclear track 2 conversations, in where I at least once heard the possibility that both Pakistan and India are given this opportunity to conduct some more tests, because they want to refine and develop their nuclear arsenal. And they argue that once we are allowed 6 months of testing, then they will sign it. Again, this is, as you know, very complicated, and this can create a bad precedent. But other than that, the standard position Pakistan has, and I think they are going to stick to it, that if Pakistan is going to do any of these things, signing NPT, signing CTBT and other international important documents, if India is going to go that route, that's their position. They're pretty hard on.
Gentleman in the fourth row.
Miles Pomper from the Center for Nonproliferation Studies. You mentioned that Pakistan earlier kind of, helped out some of these countries because they felt they owed them for what they'd provided to its own program. Obviously, the country that perhaps provided the most money is now possibly in the market for nuclear technology, Saudi Arabia. Nuclear weapons technology, I should say. So what's your sense of the possibility of Pakistan helping out that kind of effort? And also, some of my colleagues have found evidence the Saudis are building a missile plant, and people are wondering the origin of what that plant might be, and would Pakistan possibly be the source of that?
So the question had to do with Saudi Arabia and whether or not whether or not Pakistan is offering assistance to Saudi Arabia either in nuclear or missile technology.
This is an extremely important question, and I've been asked this question many times, and I've dealt with this in one of my sections in my book. In conclusion, a little background, very briefly. Pakistan and Saudi relation has been quite cordial, and in fact more than cordial for last many decades, since the Afghan Jihad. And since whenever Pakistan gets into trouble, Saudis come forward with a chunk of money. I was interviewing the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif about his decision to conduct nuclear tests in 1998, and he mentioned that he received 6 calls from President Clinton, and he said but what really mattered was this call from Saudi King, who said, don't worry about sanctions. We are going to take care of we'll continue to give you oil. Payments can be given later on, and that, according to Nawaz Sharif, Prime Minister, was one of the most important factors in his decision making. Today, also, Pakistan is pretty close to Saudi Arabia for the same reasons. It's not about ideology necessarily, it is about money. And Pakistan's military relationship with Saudi Arabia has also improved over a period of time. Just anecdotally, but I think it's very insightful that about 2 or 3 years ago, when Saudis requested Pakistan for military support, the Prime Minister and the Army Chief said, yes, we are going we are ready to send Pakistani military forces to Saudi Arabia for their role on the Yemen conflict side. Whereas in the Corps Commanders meeting, the top generals refused. And they said this is against Pakistan's national security interest, because the Saudi money that has been coming into some of the Pakistani madrasas and some of the Pakistani coffers of the militant groups has changed the whole dynamic in Pakistan and has played a very negative role in terms of extremism and radicalization in Pakistan. And then the issue went to Pakistani National Assembly. And those debates are still, if you go on YouTube, you'll find those debates. Pakistani National Assembly, I think 2 years ago, around that time, voted against Pakistani alliance with Saudi Arabia. And they said, we are not going to send Pakistani forces to Saudi Arabia. So that's the kind of national mood. National mood in Pakistan, public opinion has a lot of impact. So, and now Imran Khan has still invited the Saudi Crown Prince, gave him the highest national award, and received many $1 billion, which Pakistan desperately needed. I think that Pakistan is relatively a more mature nuclear state today than it was in the year 2000. I don't see any possibility of Pakistan handing over any material to Saudi Arabia. However, it is possible and it is likely, in my view, that in a situation of conflict, Pakistan will offer kind of a nuclear umbrella status or something like that to Saudi Arabia. There will be no active, and this is my conclusion based on what I know so far. Pakistan they have learned the hard way. They have learned through their nose, as they say, of what happened with A.Q. Khan. They are not, for a variety of reasons, but also to keep the money flow on. The day they sell nuclear weapons to Saudi Arabia, it's over. I think there's that factor at play as well. But in this case, Pakistan is really concerned about international sanctions, about United States. They know that this is a real red line. So they're going to offer some support indirectly. Imran Khan was asked this, the Prime Minister of Pakistan was asked this question when he was standing next to the Saudi Crown Prince. What about, what is your security role with Saudi Arabia? He said, we are never going to leave Saudi Arabia because our police bases are there. Then there was a counter question about Yemen. And he said, whatever the situation may be, if Saudi Arabia is threatened, we will do anything that we can do. This is an indirect reference to what Pakistan may offer. There might be something like that, either already on the papers in a confidential setting, or there might be this tacit understanding. Previously, it had a different notion. Previously, Saudi Arabia was always feeling threatened from Israel. I think now that has changed. The Israeli-Saudi relations are pretty cordial because of the Iran issue. Saudis wanted a clear-cut statement from Pakistan, a statement against Iran, which they actually gave in so many words, indirectly, saying to Iran, not to Israel, because Israel is no more apparently a threat to Saudi Arabia, as seen by the Crown Prince and the current Saudi regime, and that has its plus points and negative points. But Iran's threat to Saudi Arabia is now a dominant factor in Saudi mindset. And there Pakistan has offered them, which indirectly is saying whatever it may cost. So there's something about that nuclear umbrella cover, but very indirectly. The prospects of anything directly, physically, command of nuclear missiles or control to Saudi Arabia, I think is highly unlikely.
So do we have any students with a question at this point? Yes, the gentleman in the back.
My name is Zor Taylor. I'm a security policy student at the Elliott School. What's the command and control situation? What actors play what roles in the Pakistani system, and what would happen in the event of state failure?
So the question has to do with the command and control system within Pakistan for nuclear weapons. So who are the actors and what might happen in an emergency situation?
This is an extremely important point because the command and control system is really tested in times of emergency, and this issue is more relevant to the tactical nuclear weapons than the main nuclear arsenal, because tactical nuclear weapons have to be moved around very quickly. So what we know is that Pakistan's nuclear program or nuclear weapons are in a disassembled form. So they need 2 or 3 military leaders to be in one place with their codes to make it into a one nuclear weapon. So that's often mentioned by Pakistan. Then they have these permissive links and 2 or 3 steps that are used by Western command control systems. So on those things, again, we don't know the intricate details of that, but based on what we know from leading scholars is that they have, the command and control system is based linked to the code systems that they have developed. But normally it is two-step. In Pakistan they say it is a three-step process. I think the bigger issue is when you'll not have this issue of disassembled form, when the tactical nuclear weapons, because if they are in a critical situation in the border area, they are being moved around very quickly. It means there'll be only one leader most likely, possibly a junior level officer, rather than a brigadier general or a major general, or in this case, for the use of a weapon, you have to have the army chief, the president and the prime minister on the same page with the local military commander who's the commander of the strategic forces. But in other situations of a violent situation, which is possible, given what's happening between India and Pakistan, and you have some tactical weapons on the ground, or if you are using those nuclear materials for mines or something else, which is one of the serious concerns by the Western security analysts, then it becomes problematic. For them, their answer is that they have profiled the people deeply, and still there'll be some checks. But that is where it becomes vulnerable to some of the militant organizations as well. So far, we had about 2 or 3 terrorist attacks on nuclear facilities, but those were not stopped. Those were kind of suicide bombers who knew this is the gate, this is the third layer of security. On the gate, a bus was coming out with some officials from that nuclear facility. They died because on the gate, the main entrance, there was a suicide bomber waiting who walked into that bus. Or there was a car, SUV, in which they had bombed. They hit, they targeted nuclear facilities employees' official vehicle. But so far, there has been no intrusion in a sense that some technical person who could be inside the system and who will take out some stuff. That is far more different. So far, the Pakistani terrorist organizations have not shown the kind of skill and expertise that is needed to go and go inside the system. So the biggest threat about this kind of issue that you are referring to is that an insider, a senior military officer or a senior nuclear scientist who's inside the system, who, because of his radical religious views or ethnic issues or political views, can help somebody steal something. And for that, again, the argument from SPD is that they have now far more checks on these people, from their health checks to their psychological tests to a strong intelligence network. There is honestly no way to verify this or know exactly. There are some problematic signs. In 2007, 8, and 9, there were attacks on Pakistani military installations, including the general headquarters, where the militants were about a few feet away from the head of the Pakistani military. The Pakistani nuclear weapons cannot be more secure than the head of the military. So at that time, they learned that there was somebody inside who gave access. But here again, killing a person is different than going inside a system where you need technical know-how. We have not seen any signs that terrorists have developed that kind of expertise, but it's a constant threat, because this is a country where there are many militant organizations, some operating in Afghanistan, some in Kashmir, some locally. The number of terrorist attacks in Pakistan have gone down significantly in the last 2 years, so that's a positive sign. And the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan has been kind of almost thrown out of the tribal areas. So Pakistan's counter-terrorism successes tell us that the security situation inside the country is improved. But I don't have any specific answer to give you on either side when it comes to nuclear security inside the system. That we are only deducting based on the overall security improvements. And there are overall security improvements. That's how I will conclude.
So I guess that is pretty much how we will conclude. I just wanted to say that no one is more capable than you of giving such a comprehensive and authoritative reading of exactly what's happening. I mean, one thing that I draw away from this is a little bit more optimism, as I alluded to before, both in terms of the theoretical, ideological, and physical aspects of the control of weapons within Pakistan, although there are plenty of challenges which you identified so readily. So I'd just again like to thank you on behalf of the MAIA program here at the Elliott School and the Institute